Hi, everyone. I hope you and your family are doing well during this global crisis. There are two main questions that I've been getting from my clients while we're going through this. And the first one is whether or not you still have to do custody exchanges while you have a stay at home order. And then the second thing is, can I get my emergency situation dealt with while the courts are closed? So we're going to tackle those two things today because the courts have given some additional clarification on how to handle both of those situations. So the first one is going to be about custodial exchanges. And before we get too far in it, let me just make sure I introduce myself. My name is Alicia Kinchlow, and again, I'm an attorney based out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, handling cases in Philly and some of the surrounding areas, including Montgomery County, Bucks County, Delaware County. And I mentioned that we're going to focus on Philadelphia County today because the courts in each county are handling them a little bit differently. So you want to make sure that you look to the website for the county that you're in to see when your courts are going to reopen. They may open under the governor's directive on April 6th. They may have some additional procedures they're going to be undertaking depending on how the crisis is affecting them. So make sure you're looking at the county's website to understand what your court is doing right now and then what happens when they're supposed to be back up on the 6th of April. All right. So when it comes to Philadelphia County, we've received some additional instruction from our president judge, Judge IDC Fox, in order number 18. I'm going to link to the order in the show notes, and I also have it up on my website at kinchowlaw.com. All right. Now, this order provides guidance about whether or not you have to do custody exchanges or whether or not they're permitted during a stay-at-home order. Now, the short answer is yes. Now, before the order came down from Judge Fox, I had started getting questions like this from my clients. And what I did with them is that I told them to reach out to the other co parent to talk about what's in the best interest of their children. If they are doing custody exchanges every couple of days or maybe every other weekend, your answer might be different or your decision might be different. So it's important to kind of reach out to that other parent to try to get some communication going about what's in the best interest of the children. Some things to also consider is whether or not that child or someone else in the household has some type of underlying illness that can make them more susceptible to catching the coronavirus or having a more hard time with it, or whether one of the parents is an essential person and they're going back and forth to work. So if they're a medical provider, if they're a first responder, if they work in a grocery market, these are people who are going to still be going to work and coming into contact with more people. And again, raising the potential exposure of that child or anyone else in the household, now actually two households, to coronavirus. So have some of those discussions and talk about what's in the best interest of your children, and then come up with and some ideas about how to maybe compensate the parent who's going to have less time immediately with more time after everything settles. So you may decide that, hey, for the 14 days the child is going to stay with this parent because this parent's not going to work and has less people coming in and out of the household than the other parent, and I'll make up that time as soon as we get back on our feet. So those are some ideas. And what I also counsel my own clients to do is to make sure that this is in writing. So that way you're protected. Hopefully that won't be an issue, but make sure that it's in writing, maybe in a text message or an email. Most court orders specifically state, but they also suggest that parties are allowed to amend the order, especially temporarily, by agreement of the parties. So you're not doing anything wrong by coming to an agreement amongst yourselves about what's in the best interest of your child, especially during a time like this. All right. Now let's talk about emergency petitions because, again, something else has come up. Now, what exactly is an emergency petition? That is where you're seeking some type of immediate relief. There's something going on where you need the courts to get involved right away. Now, when it comes to normally handling these types of things, the courts are already looking at whether or not there is some type of health or safety issue that causes you or requires you to do something right away. Now, with the current situation with the courts being closed, they're going to probably be looking at this a little bit more narrowly. So you really, really, really want to make sure this is an emergency situation, something that cannot wait until April 6th. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, the way that these things are handled are a little bit different. Not actually not a little bit different. They're very different than they're normally handled because we're not going into the courts to file them. We're actually going to do it through email. So the court has provided documents to help you do this. And again, I'm going to link to them in the show notes and on my website, kenstrolaw.com, so you'll have access to the documents. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to create an emergency petition. The emergency petition needs to spell out what the emergency is. Now, sometimes when we create these things, we're not putting in the details in the actual papers themselves. We believe that we're going to get an opportunity to talk to a judge or to a master and explain what the emergency situation is. Understand again that your documents are going to be reviewed by someone getting them in an email form. It needs to tell them exactly what the emergency is. Okay? The next thing you're going to do, or next thing that the order provides that you should do, is you should attach with it a petition for a complaint, well, excuse me, a complaint for custody, and that's where there's been no previous complaint before, or a petition to modify custody, where there has been a complaint or there has been an order, or a third thing, which is a petition for contempt. So if your safety issues is arising out of a contempt issue, then you will attach the petition for contempt forms there. Now, aside from your petitions, you're going to also attach a domestic relations information sheet and a criminal history verification form. If you filed anything with regard to custody in Philadelphia before, you're probably familiar with these forms. Okay, these things are filled out and used in every petition for custody, and you also usually have to complete them again once you arrive to court and you're getting ready to go into your hearing. They ask for the same information again. They like to stay updated with your information as well as your criminal history verification forms. All right, so once you get all of these things together, you're going to email them along with your telephone number where you can be reached to custodyemergency@courts.phila.gov. And the courts will then take those documents, they're going to review them, and a judge will decide whether or not there is an emergency situation that requires immediate intervention. Okay, and they're going to respond to you using the email that you provided to them and or the telephone number that you provided to them. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring those things closely. Make sure your voicemail is not full, and make sure you're checking your email and your spam folders to make sure you're getting any responses that may come back from your emergency petition email. Once the courts have decided that this is a situation that requires some type of immediate intervention, they're going to respond to you and let you know what the next steps are. Those things could be an order, a temporary order, with a date to come back to court once the courts are open, maybe a date to come back to court once the courts are open, or maybe some type of emergency hearing where they're going to conduct it by telephone or video teleconferencing. They really don't provide any specifics as to what they're going to do in terms of relief, but they will contact you and let you know what your next steps are. So it's important to know that just because the courts are technically closed or have limited functions at this time, there are things that you can do if you need emergency relief, okay? But you want to make sure that it really is an emergency. Again, I'm going to link to all of these things in the show notes. I'm going to have them also up on my website. I hope that this answers some of your questions about custodial exchanges and emergency petitions. And I hope that you and your family remain well and safe during this time. Until next time, take care.